What Vikings did to the wives of defeated warriors was worse than death. In the smoke-shrouded aftermath of Viking raids across medieval Europe, where the screams of battle gave way to a more insidious horror that would haunt survivors for the rest of their lives, there existed practices so systematically cruel and psychologically devastating that they represented something far beyond the conventional brutality of medieval warfare. The deliberate destruction of conquered women's identities, dignity, and humanity through methods designed not merely to enslave their bodies, but to completely obliterate their sense of self and transform them into living symbols of their husband's defeat and their own complete subjugation to Viking dominance. This is the investigation into how Norse raiding culture developed elaborate systems for breaking the spirits and destroying the lives of captured women through techniques that combined physical brutality with sophisticated psychological torture, creating conditions of existence so horrific that many victims viewed death as a merciful escape from the systematic dehumanization that awaited them in Viking society. Today, we explore the archaeological evidence, saga literature, and historical accounts that reveal how the treatment of defeated warriors' wives became an integral part of Viking conquest strategy, designed to demonstrate total dominance while providing ongoing psychological satisfaction for the conquerors who took pleasure in the complete destruction of their enemies' most precious relationships and social bonds. Our investigation begins with the fundamental Norse concepts of honor and shame that shaped their approach to conquest and captivity, where the complete humiliation of defeated enemies was considered as important as military victory itself, leading to the development of practices specifically designed to maximize the psychological suffering of captured women while simultaneously advertising the absolute power of their Viking captors. Archaeological evidence from Viking Age settlements reveals the physical infrastructure of systematic captivity, including specialized buildings, restraining devices, and living quarters that were designed specifically for housing and controlling captured women in conditions that prioritized degradation and submission over basic human survival or dignity. The Old Norse sagas, while often romanticized in later retellings, contain detailed descriptions of capture practices that reveal how Viking raiders systematically targeted the wives and daughters of defeated warriors for treatment that was designed to be psychologically devastating rather than simply physically brutal, creating ongoing reminders of defeat that extended far beyond the battlefield. Contemporary medieval chronicles from monasteries and royal courts describe the systematic nature of Viking practices regarding captured women, with detailed accounts of how these captives were deliberately displayed, marked, and treated in ways that served both practical and psychological purposes in establishing Viking dominance over conquered territories. The legal codes and customs of Viking society reveal how captured women existed in a state of complete legal vulnerability that was even more extreme than traditional slavery, with their treatment governed not by property laws, but by concepts of honor, revenge, and the ongoing demonstration of conquest that required their continued degradation as proof of Viking superiority. Archaeological investigations of Viking burial sites have revealed evidence suggesting that some captured women were subjected to ritual humiliation and marking that served religious as well as social purposes. integrating their suffering into Norse spiritual practices that viewed the complete domination of enemies as essential to maintaining divine favor and warrior status. The economic systems of Viking society incorporated captured women not merely as laborers, but as ongoing symbols of conquest whose treatment was carefully calibrated to maximize their psychological suffering while ensuring their survival as living trophies that demonstrated their captors' power and their former protectors' failure to defend them. Medieval sources describe how captured women were subjected to public ceremonies of degradation that served multiple functions in Viking society, including religious rituals, community bonding activities, and ongoing reminders of military success that reinforced social hierarchies while providing entertainment through the systematic humiliation of helpless victims. The psychological techniques employed by Viking captors reveal sophisticated understanding of how to destroy individual identity and replace it with complete submission, using methods that combine social isolation, systematic degradation, and deliberate destruction of all connections to previous life and relationships. Contemporary accounts from survivors who escaped or were ransomed reveal the long-term psychological damage caused by Viking captivity practices, with descriptions of trauma symptoms that persisted for years after physical freedom was obtained, suggesting that the psychological destruction was often permanent and irreversible. The training and conditioning of captured women involved elaborate programs designed to break resistance through combinations of physical punishment, social humiliation, and systematic destruction of hope that were intended to create completely compliant individuals who would serve not only as laborers but as ongoing demonstrations of Viking power over their former communities. Archaeological evidence from Viking domestic sites reveals the living conditions imposed on captured women, including specialized housing that was designed to maximize their isolation and vulnerability while ensuring their availability for whatever purposes their captors deemed appropriate, creating environments that prioritized control and degradation over basic human needs. The religious and cultural significance of capturing and degrading enemy women in Viking society is evident in their mythology and ritual practices, which celebrated the complete domination of enemies as essential to warrior identity and divine approval, making the systematic abuse of captured women a fundamental aspect of Norse spiritual and social life. Medieval legal documents reveal how the status of captured women was deliberately kept ambiguous and vulnerable, preventing them from gaining any legal protections or social recognition that might interfere with their ongoing utility as symbols of conquest and sources of psychological satisfaction for their captors and the broader Viking community. The systematic nature of Viking practices regarding captured women is evident in the consistency of treatment across different geographic regions and time periods, suggesting that these were not random acts of cruelty, but carefully developed cultural practices that were transmitted through Viking society as essential elements of proper conquest behavior. Contemporary medical texts and archaeological evidence reveal the physical toll of systematic degradation on captured women, with evidence of malnutrition, physical trauma, and premature death that resulted from treatment designed to maintain their symbolic value while showing complete disregard for their survival or well-being. The social functions served by the systematic abuse of captured women extended beyond individual satisfaction to include community bonding, hierarchical reinforcement, and ongoing propaganda that demonstrated Viking power to both their own people and potential enemies who might consider resistance to Norse expansion and raiding activities. Archaeological investigations of Viking trading posts and settlements reveal how captured women were integrated into broader economic networks, with their treatment serving not only local psychological and social functions, but also demonstrating Viking power and methods to potential trading partners and political allies throughout medieval Europe. The resistance attempts by captured women, documented in various medieval sources, reveal both the extreme conditions they faced and the sophisticated methods Vikings had developed for preventing and punishing any efforts to escape, resist, or maintain connections to their previous lives and identities. The long-term impact of Viking practices on medieval European society extended beyond individual victims to influence broader cultural attitudes about warfare, captivity, and the treatment of conquered populations, with Viking methods being both feared and sometimes emulated by other military cultures that encountered Norse raiding practices. Modern archaeological techniques have revealed evidence of the systematic nature of Viking practices regarding captured women through analysis of settlement patterns, burial practices, and material culture that demonstrates how these practices were integrated into all aspects of Norse society rather than being isolated incidents of individual cruelty. The psychological sophistication of Viking methods for breaking and controlling captured women reveals understanding of human psychology that was far more advanced than their reputation for simple brutality would suggest, indicating systematic development of techniques designed to achieve maximum psychological impact through carefully planned and executed programs of degradation. As we examine the archaeological evidence, historical documents, and saga literature that preserve glimpses of these practices, we discover how Viking society developed systematic methods for destroying the lives and identities of captured women that went far beyond conventional slavery or military brutality, creating conditions of existence so psychologically devastating that they represented a form of living death that was deliberately designed to be worse than actual killing, revealing how conquest cultures can develop elaborate systems of ongoing cruelty that serve multiple social, psychological, and cultural functions while demonstrating the terrifying creativity humans can apply to the systematic destruction of their fellow human beings when such destruction becomes integrated into cultural values and social practices.